Alright chiefs, grab your beverages, snacks, whatever it is and settle into your recliners, because we're about to dive into the wild world of the most ridiculous scams in the Philippines. From the classic, I need money for my sick relative, to the infamous, I need a new phone or else I cannot contact you, these scams are as colorful as a tropical sunset. Now let's set off on the correct foot to set the pace right. The real deception is within yourself, in allowing yourself to be deceived. Not every Filipino you meet is out to deceive you. Keep an open mind, judge situations wisely, and act swiftly when necessary. Alright, let's take a look at the top 3 most ridiculous scams that Westerners fall for. 1. Relationship fraud. This is the most frequent scam in the Philippines, yet men continue to fall victim to it every year. Unverified statistics suggest a 99.99% chance of a Westerner being scammed online at this very moment, with a 90% chance that they are not even talking to a person with a real identity. It's not that the men never learn, it's that the women or locals will never stop trying. While there are countless single ladies in the Philippines, not all are looking for foreign partners, debunking the myth that all Filipino women are interested in foreigners. In reality, these women are diverse individuals with unique aspirations, and while some may find foreign partners appealing, many are simply looking for love and companionship, regardless of nationality. Understanding this complexity is key to appreciating the true nature of relationships in the Philippines. On the other hand, foreign men have only one common aspiration. Think about it. The first and foremost would start with the letter S, right? Security? Guess that wasn't the word you thought of, but it is most certainly part of the deal. Many Western men seek security in this part of the world. Relationship security, financial security, whatever that makes them run from their country of origin, not all of them are here for the cheap drinks and blissful sunsets. Let's face another fact that resonates or sits well with 99% of all the foreign men watching. You or yes, we are all suckers for the S word. I didn't mean security this time. I'm sure you're all familiar with what I'm referring to. It's human nature and it's nothing to be ashamed of, unless you want to behave like you're at one of P. Diddy's after parties. That may be the underlying reason why foreign men fall for relationship fraud year in, year out, and the numbers will keep on growing unless this issue is echoed through the sands of time, via mass communication channels such as YouTube, FB, and other social media forums. The S word is why foreign men repeatedly fall victim to relationship fraud. 100% of the problem exists or sits with men who can't control themselves. Forget conventional rankings like the top 3 or top 5, there's only one jaw-dropping ridiculous scam that every unsuspecting expat should watch out for. Anyway, this video was inspired by an event that unfolded not so long ago in Manila. A few years ago, I found myself savoring a drink at one of the most popular expat clubs in Manila, a vibrant hub filled with laughter, music, women, and stories from around the world. And there he was, a figure straight out of a 70s flick, an unforgettable presence that could only be described as a modern-day hippie. This guy was American, whilst embodying an aura of free-spiritedness with his long, flowing hair and a majestic beard that seemed to drift like the clouds above. We shall refer to him as Bill for context. Almost every night, he occupied his usual spot at the bar, a fortress of empty beer bottles gradually rising before him like trophies of his alcoholism. With each bottle he polished off, his gaze remained fixed ahead, as if he were peering into the depths of the universe, or perhaps just lost in the melodies of memories that only he could hear. There was something mysterious about him, an unspoken history that drew patrons' eyes, curious about the man who seemed free-spirited and the stories that he held back, hidden behind those soulful eyes. He was the kind of person who made you wonder about adventures untold and dreams yet to be realized. You could easily picture him strumming a guitar by a campfire, spinning tales of love and liberation under a starry sky. But there was always a strange coldness that surrounded him. Every night, the energy of the club danced around him, creating a tapestry of laughter and camaraderie, drawn together by the enigmatic charm of this modern-day sage, lost in a world of his own making. Little did I know that this seemingly ordinary night would lead to extraordinary revelations, all sparked by this mysterious hippie, and perhaps a drink or two. That night, the rhythm of the club washed over me like a wave, and emboldened by the liquid courage coursing through my veins, I stumbled over to where he sat, a solitary figure at his usual table. I clutched a bucket of cold beer in my hands, its chilled metal glinting under the neon lights. With a grin that felt a little too foolish in my tipsy state, I slammed the bucket down in front of him. "Hey, man," I slurred, "there are 5 bottles of Pilsens in here, and you can have 2. I'll take the 3. I just want to get to know you." I leaned in closer, the familiar scent of hops and mischief mingling in the air. "You look like one hell of an interesting character, and I know you've got a story to tell. But from the looks of it, you're not exactly eager to share." His eyes seemed like an abyss of experiences, flickered with curiosity as he stared me down. I could see the hint of a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth, but there was a depth there too, like an ocean of unspoken tales. I could almost hear the echoes of laughter and heartache hidden behind the layers of his composed demeanor. The dim light of the bar transformed his figure into an almost mythical presence, a man who had danced with the sands of time, yet remained anchored in that moment. As the club pulsed around us, vibrant and alive, I felt a connection crackle in the air, electric and alive. My drunken bravado dimmed for a moment as I awaited his response, that blend of anticipation and intrigue settling like a warm blanket over us. What would unfold in those precious minutes? Would he finally let down the walls, peel back the layers of his enigmatic existence, and share the secrets of how he came to call this place home? The night held promises of revelations, and I was ready to listen, thirsting for the truths behind those intriguing eyes. He turned to me, his deep, serious eyes piercing through the haze of laughter and music swirling around us. He began, his voice a gravelly whisper woven with layers of emotion. "My story is very short." I raised an eyebrow, surprised by the sudden intensity of his gaze. "Well," he continued, a hint of a wry smile ghosting across his lips, "there really isn't much to tell, but there are feelings to carry." I leaned in closer, intrigued, drawn into the gravity of his words. "I carry these feelings with me everywhere I go," he confessed, his voice barely above a murmur, as if sharing a sacred truth. "So I come here to drink these feelings away, to drown them in chemicals and noise, but the reality is that each morning I wake up to the same emotions, as relentless as the rising sun. And then, just like clockwork, the day repeats itself." His eyes shimmered with an ache that transcended the ordinary, and I felt that familiar pang of empathy tugging at my heart. "But," he continued, determination creeping into his tone, "each day, I remain hopeful that the person who made me feel this way will come back, and will try to make up for it." In that moment, the club faded into the background, the laughter and clinking of glasses dissolving into echoes of his pain and yearning. Here was a man, seemingly lost in the intoxicating comforts of the evening, yet burdened by the weight of a heartache that refused to let go. The truth of his struggle resonated within me, both a haunting reminder of our shared human experience and an invitation to dive deeper into the depths of his soul. I knew I had stumbled onto something profound, a connection woven from shared vulnerabilities, and I yearned to unravel the threads that tied us together in this fleeting night of solace and revelations. He paused for a moment, the weight of his thoughts lingering in the air like smoke from a burnt-out cigarette. "I come from California," he said finally, his voice steady but colored with an undercurrent of something deeper. "The US is one of the best countries in the world. My country can afford to take care of me, so I'm not worried about my existence or what I've lost." The pride in his tone was palpable, but beneath it, I could discern a vulnerability, a crack in his armor that hinted at something raw. Then and there, I sensed the subtext, the way his words veiled the truth of something taken, something precious that left a shadow in its wake. He was hopeful, still clinging to the fragile thread of a possible return, a reconciliation with whoever had caused this wound in his life. The more he spoke, the clearer it became. This was not merely a loss of material things, but an emotional heist that had left him adrift. I locked my gaze onto his, refusing to let the distance of the bar's chaos distract me. "What if that person doesn't come back?" I asked, my voice firm yet gentle. The question hung between us like an uninvited guest, laden with the weight of harsh realities. he faltered, his expression shifting imperceptibly as if I had peered beyond the facade and stirred the unspoken fears hidden within. In that fleeting moment, I watched as the veneer of hope wavered, replaced by the stark vulnerability of uncertainty. It was a question that demanded introspection, forcing him to confront the possibility that the very person he longed to return might never make amends, that perhaps healing wouldn't come from outside, but would need to be cultivated within himself. Silence enveloped us, the world around us fading into a blur as we communed in this shared moment of profound truth. I could feel the gravity of his thoughts pulling at my own heartstrings, and I wondered what lay beneath the surface of his emotions, an ocean of unvoiced fears, unhealed wounds, and a flicker of hope that refused to extinguish itself, even in the face of uncertainty. He sprang to his feet, a whirlwind of emotion, and in one swift motion, sent the fortress of bottles he had carefully stacked tumbling to the floor. The crash echoed through the room, mirroring the turmoil that surged within him. "The Filipina I thought would be my forever," he shouted, his voice cracking with disbelief and fury. "She duped me for almost 1,000,000 pesos and ran off with someone younger." Stunned, I felt my heart race as I processed his words. The weight of betrayal hung in the air, palpable and raw. It was as if time had momentarily frozen, leaving only his anguished declaration to reverberate through the silence that followed. The stark betrayal stung, and all I could muster was a shaky response. "What if she doesn't come back?" The question slipped from my lips, laden with concern and hesitant curiosity. His gaze darkened, the fire of anger flickering as confusion flashed across his face. It was a question that cut deeper than I intended, forcing him to confront a painful reality. In the aftermath of heartbreak, the fear of permanence loomed large, and I could see him grappling with it. For a moment, he stood there, the chaos of broken glass scattered around him, each shard a reminder of his shattered expectations. I could sense the turmoil beneath his bravado. This wasn't just about losing money or being deceived. It was about trust, love, and the fear of abandonment. "What if she doesn't come back?" The words hung heavy in the air, as he wrestled with a truth he might not have wanted to face. It ventured beyond the surface of anger, digging into the despair of potential loss. The reality settled in like a dense fog, and I felt the emotion in the room change, morphing from outrage to an unsettling vulnerability. Through his pain, I glimpsed the fragility of his heart, once full of hope, now exposed to the sting of betrayal and pain that he wakes up to every day. I silently wished I could take back my question, but it was too late. In the quiet that followed, as we both considered the implications of that question, I realized we were standing on the precipice of something profound. Life had a way of reshaping us through our struggles, and in that moment, amidst the remnants of his shattered fortress, he was not only grappling with the loss of her but also beginning to confront a deeper fear, that sometimes, moving forward meant accepting the possibility of never going back. He fixed me with an intense gaze, an unsettling fire igniting within his eyes. "If you say one more word," he warned, his voice low and menacing, "I'll choke you." The air around us thickened, a tension so palpable it felt almost suffocating. I could hardly process the threat before he turned abruptly, calling over one of the bar attendants who was painstakingly sweeping up the shards of glass that littered the floor. "Tell him to leave me alone," he instructed, his tone leaving no room for dissent, a stark command that cut through the air. I watched as the attendant, caught off guard by the confrontation, glanced nervously between us, sensing the brewing storm that was unfolding. "And if he doesn't," he continued, his voice gaining an edge, "you're going to tell the bouncer to come and take him away. Otherwise, I'll take matters into my own hands." A chill raced down my spine. The words hung in the air, ominous and suffocating, as I struggled to comprehend the drastic shift that had just occurred. This wasn't just an outburst, it was a manifestation of his unraveling, a volatile combination of pain, rage, and a desperate need to assert control in a world that had turned upside down. I felt a pang of fear mixed with sympathy. It was clear that he was spiraling, battling demons that threatened to consume him whole. What had started as raw vulnerability had morphed into a protective armor of aggression, and now the walls around him were fortified by anger and threats. The attendant hesitated, clearly conflicted, as the weight of the situation pressed down on her. She was caught in this volatile exchange, tasked with mediating a confrontation that felt increasingly dangerous and unstable. I could see the flicker of fear in her eyes, mirroring my own. "Listen," I attempted, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm not here to cause trouble." But before I could finish my thought, he cut me off, his gaze still searing into mine, as if he were daring me to speak again. The tension escalated, a palpable electricity crackling between us. The once vibrant atmosphere of the bar had transformed into a battleground of emotions, the laughter of other patrons fading into the background as we stood ensnared in our own confrontation. In that moment, I realized that his anger wasn't just aimed at me, it was a reflection of his own pain, a desperate attempt to hide behind bravado when the reality of betrayal had left him feeling stripped and vulnerable. I felt the urge to reach out, to break through the wall he had erected, but the threat in his words loomed larger than any compassion I could muster. Finally, the bartender stepped in, placing a firm yet gentle hand on my shoulder, guiding me away from the escalating situation. "Look," she said, higher voice low and steady, "that guy is well off. He can afford everything he desires, but no amount of money can erase the memory of his love." Her eyes flickered towards the man, still seething with unresolved pain, as she continued, "He was over 60 when they met, she was only 17. They married when she turned 18. He showered her with money and gifts, believing he would spend the rest of his days by her side. But then she ran off with a Filipino man." My heart sank as I absorbed the bartender's words. There was a depth to this man's sorrow that was hard to fathom. That stung him ever since, the bartender lamented, her expression softening. He blames himself for her leaving him and wishes every day that she will come back. I could feel a twinge of empathy for the man, who had once believed in love so fiercely only to be left shattered. I thought about the vulnerability he must have felt, allowing someone so young into his heart, only to have that trust razed to the ground. In his pursuit of happiness, he had unknowingly set himself up for a storm, and now he was trapped in the aftermath. "She won't come back," said the bar attendant, a hint of resignation in his tone. "She's made her money and is now looking for someone else that she can do the same to." The finality of her words hung heavily in the air, as if she were sealing the fate of a story much larger than any one person. It was a stark reminder of the transactional nature of relationships in some cases, the way love can sometimes morph into something more akin to a business arrangement than a deep emotional connection. The man's past glimmered with the illusion of happiness, now replaced by a grim reality that felt impossible to escape. In that moment, I realized that every story has its two sides, and the man's anguish was perhaps a mirror to my own vulnerabilities. Love and loss intertwine in complex ways, and sometimes, all we can do is witness the aftermath, holding space for the wounded as they navigate their paths forward. I left the club that night without talking to Bill and never ever approached him ever again.